see Matt Gaetz in the green room. I'm going to bring him in now. Matt, I met you at the Pentagon press corps back a couple weeks ago, and well, let's start there. Matt, thanks for joining us. But what do you think of the new press corps, man? What was your impression?
This whole thing has been wild because when we learned that the outgoing press corps was unwilling to simply sign a document that they would not ask people to break the law. Like that was the big fight between the New York Times and the Pentagon. They were wandering around, pestering generals for war plans, waiting outside of skiffs to see what they could see on people's binders or what they could glean from conversations. And that's no way to run a Department of War. So we at One America News, we took the position that we were fine with journalism that did not entice people into a felony. And so I was honored to be there with you. And I do think there are important questions to ask this Pentagon or any Pentagon. There's something about kind of the populist right that is naturally suspicious of centralized power in the military-industrial complex.
Which is healthy, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I would feel this way about, a president who I was very close to or a president that I wasn't. And in my time on the Armed Services Committee, I think I asked penetrating questions to both sides. And that is what the Republic demands. So excited to do it with you. And gosh, we've seen breaking news, just this week with the decision of the department to elevate this investigation of Senator Mark Kelly. And I really wonder how that's going to go. Maybe we can chat about it.
Yeah, let's just dive into that. So the seditious six, I guess there's ties to Jake Sullivan and into all of this. Where is this going to go? I mean, what do you think they're actually going to have some accountability here?
Well, I would caution against a posture that lionizes Senator Mark Kelly. Now, obviously, the goal of these individuals was to spark within the United States forces an unwillingness to follow the chain of command, and that is dangerous. And I mean, can we just take a moment and note the hypocrisy of the people who were like driving people out of the military if they didn't take an experimental vaccine? And if you just asked any questions about that or presented a religious exemption, you were a virus to the chain of command. And now when there are no unlawful orders that this administration has given, no one has even identified an unlawful order. You have these folks making this video, but here's my caution. When the left came after Trump, they thought that the utilization of criminal process to resolve a political dispute, that really backfired. And I wonder with Mark Kelly, are we selecting him as our 2028 Democrat nominee with this process? And if so, are we really for that? I think one of the dumbest decisions Kamala Harris made was picking Tim Walz. She could have picked the Jewish Obama out of Pennsylvania. She could have picked the astronaut out of Arizona. And instead she went with the George Floyd tampon in the boys' bathroom riot guy. I think that was very revealing. But I would prefer to run against Gavin Newsom in 2028 than Mark Kelly if the Democrat Party is capable of nominating a straight white man.
So speaking of, I tend to think a lot of this, we've been told that, that Ukraine's being shut down and Venezuela looks to be on the brink of being shut down as far as kind of I call it the organized crime playground where they can do whatever they want. Both of those countries are right in that mix. Do you think that has something to do with this freak out on the other side as to, they're getting too close to what's happening?
I think that in Venezuela, Trump is really trying to muscle this guy out without having to become the homeowners association of Caracas. I think that the forever kind of rebuild and the day in, day out maintenance of a security structure is something Trump rightly sees the perils of. And the fact that Maduro is already trying to negotiate his exit with some form of amnesty and some access to all of his ill-gotten gains really signifies that the guy probably isn't up for the fight. I mean, every time I open social media, I get another video of Maduro singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy" or doing a botched rendition of the Trump dance, and I don't know that that's going to be a deterrent.
So I
But
think
you know, you make a good point about the permissive environments that
yeah.
exist in the world for awful behavior. And you know, I don't know if I agree with your premise that Ukraine is being shut down in that regard. Like, let me push back on that and say Ukraine may be just getting opened up for its new phase of the grifting with the rebuild plan, right?
Oh,
If they, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I completely agree, but I cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we got involved in that war because as the war in Afghanistan wound down, the money
Hmm.
launderers and weapons dealers needed a playground. And so, you know, I think if we were still at war in Afghanistan, we probably wouldn't even be at war in Ukraine right now, which says a lot, actually, about the decision process to engage American resources. But in Venezuela, I think Trump is going to do better than Biden in Ukraine. And the real question in Venezuela for me will be kind of like what happens the day after, and if there is a belief that this is just going to be like a gentle handover to Edmundo Gonzalez or Corina
Machado.
Machado,
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the case. I could see a scenario, and would love your reaction to this, where a bunch of different Venezuelan generals and militias just go and start occupying gold mines, oil resource extraction, logging areas. And then if you go and try to impose any government on that, they will kill you. And I could see kind of a band of warlord generals becoming a real limitation to security there. And then, of course, what will happen is you'll get millions of Venezuelans who will wash into Colombia,
Hmm.
up the Gulf of America, which is why I think the force posture Trump has in the region is pretty smart.
So, you know, I've had a lot of Colombian primarily, but some Venezuela. I used to do a lot of business in Venezuela, trading with the banks and everything. And there, people don't realize how efficient and capable their military really is. I mean, especially the Colombians. I mean, they're very well trained. They're years of
By
decades.
us.
Yeah, I know, fighting in the jungles and against the FARC and all that stuff. So they have a pretty significant capability in, you know, soft special forces and all of that. And we don't want to get into some kind of land conflict there. I think you're right. By the way, your other calling.
What are
I
you
think
reading out of President Petro's comments in Colombia? Since that's something you've looked at, like,
yeah.
I look at Colombia really frustrated, Todd, because
Hmm.
you know this was like the shining example of U.S. diplomacy and
Yeah.
train and equip missions in the region. This was the thing we held up and said you could all be like Colombia, and now you've got a guy who's president there who is like putting out these statements that are very supportive of Maduro,
Hmm.
very like revolutionary toward the United States. And it's like, man, we made all that investment there, and you get one kind of narco trafficking leftist,
Yep.
drug-addled president, and you can really lose a lot of the ground. Now, the guys at the Department of War tell me
Hmm.
that the military to military relationship there is still good. Help educate me, if you don't mind, for a
Hmm.
second on how does that work when you've got the senior political leadership attacking us relentlessly, but then you have a military infrastructure that might still see the value of that cooperation.
I think the military, you know, has huge power in Colombia, especially, and the government, the Petro, is. You know, I'm being told that it's actually our pressuring him is actually helping his political situation, because there's, and I know people who are very MAGA American, Venezuelan, and Colombian immigrants who are saying, you know what, you know, Trump threatening my country is really pissing me off. I'm not saying that's the right take, but I'm getting that kind of pushback. And I think we need to be careful in how we really go after some of these people. That's kind of
That
my,
dynamic that you
yeah,
described may be most present in Brazil, where
yeah,
Lula was able to really secure more political support by
hmm,
holding Trump up as some sort of nemesis. And
yeah.
you know that I mean, you look at what's happening in Brazil right now; it's horrendous.
What is happening in Brazil?
Well,
You
I
know,
mean,
you got
they got Bolsonaro that they're gonna throw in a
right.
jail cell for the rest of his life, and they're trying to bar Flavio Bolsonaro, his son, from being able
Hmm.
to be a candidate for public office. And the judge there, the Supreme Court judge, has really become like a dictator of the country. Alexandre de Moraes
Sure.
just had sanctions imposed and then lifted. My hope is that the lifting of those sanctions is in line with some concession to allow the people of Brazil to vote, and you know, then the political process runs its course.
Well, Lula, everybody knows who Lula is. I mean, he was imprisoned. He got let out by essentially, us, Biden, and then, now Trump is cozying up to him. So there has to be some kind of deal in the works, I would think.
This is a huge trading partner. It's the biggest
Yeah,
economy in South America.
yeah,
And so it's like not small stakes. And I do think a strong, robust, prosperous, productive Brazil is definitely good for us, because as we disentangle from China, this near abroad becomes really important. I mean,
definitely.
I know that as we get closer to these midterms, Trump has to present as deeply focused on some of the domestic issues that matter to the country.
Hmm.
But gosh, I like this repositioning of our foreign policy away
So,
from
so do I.
the far-flung battles of Central Asian caves and desert sand dunes, and more toward the Panama Canal, our own region, not allowing the Gulf of America to be this great passageway for narcotics. And the reason the Gulf picked up is because the border shut down. Right when
Yep.
the border
Yep.
was open, you didn't see this much activity in the Gulf of America. It was going, around the Eastern Pacific, and with the Northern Triangle countries serving as a passageway in some cases. But now that Trump built the wall and has good force posture on the border, that pushes a lot of that narco trafficking to the Venezuelan shores and to the Gulf of America. And so he's being diligent and chasing it down appropriately.
That's a really good point, because he's militarized the border in the South. People don't realize he's created these, military zones along the border so that the guys have arrest authority along the border. There's no posse comitatus there at all. So it's fascinating. But what about Europe? I mean, I don't see us needing to support these people at all. You're putting people in jail for Facebook posts. You're trying to drag us into a global war. I'm very against troops in any kind of peace deal or even American support, because it's a tripwire, right? If they get the peace deal done, which Europe doesn't want, they say, okay, we'll do a false flag in a year, and they'll have to come back in with this new Article 5 they're going to give them. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think that the pivot on Europe
Mm-hmm.
from Trump 1 to Trump 2
Mm-hmm.
is so starkly reflected in the national security strategy that the administration just released. Like, you go back and read the 2017 Trump security structure, it's these great European allies.
Mm-hmm.
We have to our allies are really the basis upon which we project American power. And now you read the national security strategy, and it's like, look, we got to focus on the things that are directly impacting our shores, our people, our communities. And by the way, I mean, it is a tongue lashing for Europe. If you go and read the national security strategy,
It
it
is.
says that they have allowed their borders to erode. They have
Mm-hmm.
allowed this censorship structure to take hold, and it is a case being made that Europe is not worthy of Americans' extensive and exquisite defense if they aren't willing to do a few things to help themselves. Like, we will bend over backwards for people who will lift a finger for themselves. I believed that at the beginning of this war, Europe could have ended it between Russia and Ukraine very quickly by very quickly shutting off their interest in a lot of the natural resources coming out of Russia. By now, those resources are making their way to Asia anyway, and Russia's economy is fine. So Russia's not going to be economically pressured into ending this war.
No, it's
I
not.
think that I think that it's going to take something else.
You can tell if how effective that document is by the reaction of like Ann Applebaum at the Atlantic, the longest suicide note I've ever read. I mean, it's obviously hitting home. Did you see that article?
Yes, and like the whole, I mean, but here's what's so crazy about it, Todd. These are the people who've been wrong about everything. Like the
Exactly.
Foreign Relations
Exactly.
Council, the Wilson Center. There are all of these globalist entities that are
Yes.
funded in large part by defense contractors and at times foreign governments, whose whole goal it is to keep America in this like low grade conflict everywhere in the world, and in these different support structures. And I really think we got to start asking some questions about these train and equip missions that we do.
Yeah.
You
Totally.
probably know a lot about it, but I mean, we were talking about Colombia, but
Hmm.
you don't even have to it's not just there. Look at Africa. We go.
Yeah.
Africa is the new frontier. I mean, they happen to have all the stuff that you need to run the world with battery power, and so
Yeah.
when we go there and train up some group of special forces fighters to defend a government, we often find the people we train involved in the coups.
Totally.
Like in the last 9 African coups, we've trained the coup leader in 8 of them.
Pattern recognition.
Yeah, and I don't really know what the answer. I mean, that's a critique. I spent years thinking about what should be the United States' Africa policy. What does colonialism look like in 2025 in a way that is maintainable and beneficial to us, but I think misses some of the value propositions presented by other countries that are not aligned with our values. Like Russia shows up and they say, look, do you need regime protection? Like if your number one concern is that people are going to run in here with guns and kill you and throw you out, the Russians are a great ally because they will send muscle, and that muscle is not going to stay in country. They're Russians. They're going to protect you, and then they're going home to Russia. The Chinese just offer suitcases full of U.S. dollars in the form of bribes, and there's nothing to it. And then during a lot of the neo-globalist liberal era, America has shown up wanting to talk about what you're doing for Gay Pride Month and how many triangles you have on the flag hanging outside. And that's why we've lost so much ground there. But I would love to learn from you, Todd. What do you think how would you distill an effective U.S. policy in Africa in these times in which we live?
Well, we have to just put the mission forward first. Is it counterterrorism? Is it protection of minerals? Is it taking the oil? I mean, that's first and foremost. And I don't see any coherent strategy. You got troops all over Africa exposed. I have a son who's a infantry officer. I don't want him over there with no clear mission, to be blunt. So that's my siren song of what is the mission? What are we doing there?
Well, what if it was resources? What if you just said look, we got to be able to get the lithium, the cobalt, these rare earths that are in Africa. We need a marketplace that when U.S. companies go and make investments, somebody doesn't show up and cut their arm off. What if that was?
Well, then you're taught you have to fund it, and you have to say that publicly, and then put a correct force structure in place to do that, and that's going to be expensive. And so then you're talking colonialism, essentially, right? I mean, you're
right.
putting.
No, that's
you're
exactly
going. Yeah.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think we need a strategy in Africa that you can call it by another name if you want to be politically correct, but that is colonialism, not in an exploitive way, right? I mean, they're being exploited now. You've got all these riches, but people are still poor because these foreign actors are coming in without it providing any value to the people there. We would be a good partner for that, but the leaders oftentimes don't care. They just want to get their bribes and stay in power, and that's not really what we do.
Interesting. Let's talk about that again in the future, maybe at the next Pentagon press briefing.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
What about acquisition, man? What's going on at the Pentagon? There's a lot of reforms allegedly coming, but the Air Force is up in arms. We don't have enough money. All our money is going elsewhere. It's a food fight. I see it every day from people.
Well, obviously the acquisitions process is broken because it's corrupt. I mean, what happens is you get these generals who, in the course of their military time, get control over who is going to get certain contracts for platforms or maintenance of those platforms or parts or whatever. And their entire goal is to sink that economic opportunity in a place that will be their next lily pad, their golden parachute. And so then the decisions about acquisition aren't really about survivability, lethality, capability. They're more about who's going to be willing to create jobs for the people who can drive business there. That's what it is. And we can we can have a bunch of PowerPoints about it and a bunch of study groups and commissions. But that's what I observed over 8 years. And the result is our number one air platform, the F-35, is fully mission capable less than 40% of the time.
Yeah.
And they cost $100 million each. And the shipbuilding in this country has leaned into
Evaporated.
these littoral combat ships. Well, to the extent that we do it, it's littoral combat ships that will never get in the fight. The littoral combat ship is a floating coffin, and that's because China can hit a moving target with a hypersonic weapon system. The defenses for those systems are not sufficient on that platform, and we can't. By the way, we can't hit a moving target with a hypersonic weapon, and China can. So what do you like? You don't have to go to the Georgetown School of Foreign Service to understand how that impacts deterrence.
I spent a lot of time down in Mississippi, and you see those being built down in Pascagoula at Ingalls. It's fascinating. They're busy, but are we building the right thing?
Well, where's that going to be in the fight, Todd? You tell me where you think this brown water capability is going to be served by the littoral combat ship in a meaningful way. I
think that debate's over. I don't think anyone thinks it, and we're still building them. So it's and then they're not in the fight, as you said. And I had John Conrad, who's also one of our Pentagon press corps, the G captain guy, fascinating knowledge base of merchant marine and all that. And it's all about building frigates and merchant marine ships, and that's, in his mind, that's where we need to focus. I got you. I want to ask about the deep state, man. You've had intimate knowledge of what's going on, and where are we as a republic? Like, I mean, I have my opinion, but you tell me.
Well, I think in a way we're living post-coup attempt in this country.
Yeah.
The December 9th, 2016 meeting in Barack Obama's office, where he instructs Brennan and Clapper and Comey to weave out of whole cloth the Russia hoax and to ensnare people like General Flynn and George Papadopoulos, and to get other countries to use their spies to try to impair a U.S. presidential campaign. That, to me, is like the original sin. That's when the deep state went from like sanding around some rough edges to being very central to governance in America. And if criminal charges are brought for that sedition in D.C., of course, no one will be held accountable, because in Washington, you're only going to get juries that are very sympathetic to the government. However, the big mistake they made, Todd, was raiding Mar-a-Lago, because Trump had documents there that were exculpatory for him and implicative for the deep state. And when Biden and their crew, Christopher Wray, went and authorized that raid on Mar-a-Lago, that was a predicate criminal act that would properly venue any RICO charge against the whole enterprise in the Southern District of Florida, not in Washington, D.C. I do believe there is a grand jury impaneled in the Southern District of Florida sending out subpoenas to some of these folks.
Wow. We can only hope. Last question. Tell us about your show and everything. Tell us about One America. I did some stuff with them a long time ago, but what's happening at the network?
Thanks for giving me that chance. I love One America News. And this is a network that told a lot of hard truths back after the 2020 election about COVID, a number of things. And we were deplatformed. We were taken down to only about 10 million American homes.
I feel your pain.
in some small systems. But I tell you what, in the Trump era, there's been a lot of interest in the platforms that can give unique insights into the Trump administration, as we do every day. So I make the Matt Gaetz Show, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. One America News now is on YouTube TV. It's on Charter, Spectrum, Bright House. We're on the #1 linear cable platform, the fastest growing digital platform. Folks can subscribe also at oann.com. And we love it. We'll be covering the president's speech tonight, and I'll be giving live reaction at 9 Eastern.
Matt, thank you for joining me. I want to have you back and look forward to seeing you at the Pentagon again. Take care, my friend.
Absolutely. Take care, Todd.
Right.
Thanks for
Ciao.
the country.
Bye.